Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Set Epic Sales Goals. We'll give just a minute for folks to arrive. It's 2:00 on the dot, but I wanted to say hello and say thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I know it's been a wild year, a tough year, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute to show you ways we can work through all of that and project some successful goals for 2022 and hit those goals as well. But again, I'm Bobby Lehue, Chief Content Officer at commonsku. And for those that may not know me, I was a distributor for years. And the presentation you're about to see is a combination of just thought leaders that we have turned to and trusted, as well as folks like Catherine Graham, who ran a distributorship, and my own experience. And so we're sharing these reflections with you here now. And every year, it just seems like we change the strategy and premises based on what is happening in the market. So today our presentation is how to set epic sales goals, but you could argue that it could be called how to set sales goals when your baseline is completely trashed, because a couple of things happen. I know many of you have showed up today looking at a year that looks like this, where 2021 and 2020 was maybe flat or slower. Maybe you had an epic year, maybe because you got into PPE sales or something else. Maybe your numbers were off the charts. The commonality between the two is that you don't have anything really to compare against for last year's sales. You would have to go in and do some magic with the numbers. So really our objective here today is to talk about how to set sales goals for 2022 when you have a murky baseline to compare it to, when you don't have something really solid that you can grow on. If you're new in sales, often what would happen is you would have a year of sales, and then for your next year, you would project based on your growth from the previous year. Well, we don't have that baseline. So this is really how to set sales goals in a very strategic and planned and purposeful way, regardless of what kind of year you've had over the past 12 months or so. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to build a pyramid of goals from the bottom up. What we do when we're starting to do sales planning and sales goals is that we start with our core clients. And this industry is incredibly adept and gifted at taking care of core clients. And this is what we're going to do with this category. And this is where we're going to spend most of our time in this presentation, is we're going to talk about that core client growth. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to give you a few perspectives on what you can do to plan your growth. And then we're going to have an interview with Brett Boake, Score Promotions, who has had phenomenal growth over the past year. And he is a sales coach, a sales leader, highly respected. He spoke at SKU Camp. And I just can't wait to bring him on once we go through this quick presentation. So we'll have a quick 15, 20-minute presentation max, and then we'll bring Brett on to talk about his perspective and what he's doing with his team real time. But back to this. What we're going to focus on for the presentation is the core client growth, because that's where we are going to start and where we're going to see phenomenal increase next year in your own numbers. What you typically do when you're doing sales planning is you start with your core client growth, your anticipated growth. Their potential is what we're really hunting for, is their potential. Then you add on your new business goals to come up with your combined total of your individual goals. This would be your total individual annual sales. And then typically what you would do is roll those individual sales goals up into team goals. So this is how the structure would typically work with most companies. Now, when I was a distributor, often I would do this. It made no sense whatsoever, but I would set some arbitrary sales goal that we're going to grow at 30 or 40%. And it was a top-down number that really didn't have a lot of basis in fact, nor in really any strategic plan. It was just kind of more just guesswork. And so that was a major mistake I made. Instead, what we should start with is our core clients and looking for the gaps and the potentials. And so that's where I think you're going to find most of your success. Now, some of you might be asking the question, why should I even bother with sales goals? Why even bother? The industry's it's a cluster right now. Supply chain issues are crazy. You could argue maybe you're pessimistic about the state of the economy. Maybe you've heard inflationary talk. You don't know what next year is going to bring. And I know it's a crazy time right now. All the more reason why we should set sales goals for 2022, strategic sales goals that are based in fact, that are based in things you can do proactively to grow your sales. Because the reason you have to do it now, if it's crazier than ever, is for one reason only, and that is focus. Is it so that next year you are not dragged into a crazy, chaotic business? You are able to focus your time, your energy, your resources on the best clients to yield the greatest return. Many of us have had this experience. But I once had a client who in about a 6-month span really decimated our time and our energy. And we thought they were doing a tremendous amount of sales with us. But when we peeled it back, and I'll show you how we did that, when you looked at the numbers and when you looked at our time investment with that client, in 6 months, you realized that they were far more expensive. They were far more difficult to work with than clients that were spending more money and were less hassle. And so we were able to understand that, okay, we've really got to mine the details here and understand who we want to focus on for next year. Because many of you, I know, are just doing everything you can to keep up with the business you have. But what you want to do is take that incredible talent you have as a salesperson and focus on the right kind of clients. So that's what we're going to explore right now, is focus. Howard Marks is a famous investor that many of you probably know, net worth of over $2 billion. How important is Howard Marks and what he has to say? Warren Buffett said that when he sees an email in his inbox from Howard, it's the first thing he opens. That shows you how significant what he says matters. And I think his advice for us as an industry is so incredibly and apropos to what we do. He said, we really don't base our decisions on macro forecasts. He said, I can count on one hand the investors I know who successfully base their decisions on macro forecasts. Now, I'm bringing this quote into this presentation because we, I think, can be so subject to the winds and the fear and the things that are happening in headlines right now. If you were to check the state of the economy and what's happening, folks are watching for inflationary problems. There's talk of inflation on the rise for next year. All those things can sort of cast this negative pale on your experience and on your goals for next year. But what Mark said is fascinating, because he said he can count on one hand those who looked at the macro forecasts and said, and they could accurately predict that. What he said was that the rest of successful investors invest from the bottom up, one investment at a time, mostly without any reference to the macro outlook at all. And I think this is incredible advice for us, because we can do the same thing with our book of business. We can take our core clients, start with them, and I'll show you how we start with them and maximize the potential in each client. Howard Schultz said this: to protect and preserve our core customers is the most essential thing that we can do. In fact, the cost of losing your core customers and trying to get them back will be much greater than the cost of investing in them and trying to keep them. Or in other words, it's 5 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one, which is why we always start with our baseline of our core clients and how we grow from there. So how do we do this? How do we take our core clients, discover our clients' potential so that we can set goals and forecast accurately? Or how do we discover our team's potential? I want to pause for just a minute and acknowledge that some of you might be individual sales reps. Some of you might be team leaders. Some of you might be business owners. There are businesses of all sizes. There are folks that are tuning in that are running $30 million businesses and folks running $1 million businesses. It doesn't matter. All of these principles can be applied. I will say that though we all sell the same thing, we are not structured the same way. So you'll understand this when Brett comes on, that you have a different infrastructure for your business than you might for sales. Most of the principles here still apply anyway. So I hope you can take away 1 or 2 key elements from this, regardless of how your business is structured. So here are what I like to call 10 steps. Don't worry, they're not that hard. They are detailed. It's hard work, but they're not that hard to follow. And I'll show you how you can keep along as we move through this. But how to invest and plan your sales growth from the bottom up, one client at a time. Number 1, the first thing that I would want you to do is list your top 10 clients in declining order of gross profit. It's a fascinating exercise to take your clients in terms of annual gross sales, or if you run your business on a calendar, the past year's sales, and guesstimating what you're going to do for the next couple months to end out your year. Or if you want to just take the last rolling 12, the last 12 months, and look at what your top 10 clients did in gross sales. Then I want you to take that same list of clients and turn that into your list by declining gross profit. And I want you to compare the two, because an interesting experience will happen. This happened to me a few times, where you think your number 1, number 2, and number 3 clients are you think you know who they are, and then you process that by gross profit. Gross sales feeds egos, gross profits feeds families. We've heard that before. But gross sales tells you who you work for, but gross profit tells you who's actually working out for you. So that's the first thing I would have someone do as a sales rep, is to take their book of business and compare gross sales to gross profit in declining order of importance. Sometimes your loudest client is not your most profitable client. The second thing that I would have folks do, I was to have you calculate your projects for profitability. Now, here's what I mean by this. I would take those same numbers in terms of your gross profit, gross sales, and I would divide the overall total sales by the number of projects that you build over the past 12 months, which will give you a glimpse, or at least the closest glimpse you can have to time calculation on where you're spending your time. Because you'll find out that order average is a very interesting metric that we don't talk about a lot or don't use a lot in this business. Order average is significant because you can discover that your client that's doing $500,000 with you has a $500 order average, but your client that's doing $400,000 with you has $1,000 or $2,000 order average or more, which is significant. The industry average at one time hovered around $700 or $800 for promo. I think folks might balk at that they're more in the $1,000 to $2,000 range, somewhere around there. Everybody's business is different. But this is the one of the exercises that I like for folks to do, is to take your clients, your top 10 clients. You don't have to do this for every client, but we know that the 80-20 rule is alive and well. 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of your clients. Take those top 10 clients and figure out what your order average is for each, and then line those up so you can see how much energy and time you're spending on each of those clients. Okay. So that's step number 2. The thing I want you to keep in mind, this is another interesting exercise you can do with your team as you're planning, or if you're a solopreneur, something you can do with your clients, is to put them in this profitability matrix once you have your order average. Put your clients, are they low profit? Are they low average orders? Those are clients you should run like hell from. Or are they high profit, high average order, and low maintenance, which is what we would all want. I know most of you are laughing because there's no such thing as a low maintenance client. I get it. But you can get close. You can get close in this business. So this is your misery opportunity index. And I like to think of it as an opportunity index more than anything else. So that would be the third thing I would have you do, is actually take those averages, take that profitability, and put your clients here. So again, going back to Mark's comment, we want to know where we're going to invest our energy and our time next year. So number 3, what I want you to do is set your baseline, probably to 2019. Now, this isn't imperative. Some of you might want to use a rolling 12, the past 12 months, as your ongoing comparative data, since business has moved so fluidly and we're not quite sure. But most of us probably can go back to 2019 for a baseline to compare what our clients were doing in an average normal year, 2019. This is murky. It may not work for every client, but this might give you an idea. If your client was doing 500,000 in 2019 and they plummeted down to 250,000, you at least have some kind of a baseline that you can work from there. So number 4, and this is where we're going to get into, okay, Bobby, but how do I discover what potential my client has? If my client is doing 500,000 with me and I want to get them to 750,000, how do I discover that potential other than just trying to sell them more? Well, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to break this down by a couple different categories. First is industry potential. Remember, our core clients, our top 10 list, you should take the list and compare and list out what industries these customers belong in. Because following what industries, what's happening in terms of industries, is a phenomenal way to build your strategic plan and know where you want to invest your resources in. This is just one of so many examples. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out where the most job growth is going to happen over the next couple of years. And this is a report that they recently put out. If you'll notice, just as an example, that healthcare is obviously booming and will continue to boom. Technology is booming. Retail might see a slow next year. But you look at these categories and you can start to develop a schematic where you can say, okay, here's my top 10 clients. 5 of them are in the healthcare industry. I know I'm going to put those at the top because I'm going to see phenomenal growth, and that's where I can see potential. Remember, we're looking for ways that we can spot potential and then set our goals to base against. So just one example is to look at the industries that they are in. The next thing that we would do is to review product category potential. PPAI puts out this wonderful report almost every year. And this is 2019 sales by product category. Most of you have seen this. If you're new to the business, you might not have seen this. You might not know it exists. But this shows you what categories most buyers spend. We know that most of our clients spend 30 to 50% of their revenue on apparel and wearables. But what you might be doing, you might have a client that has pigeonholed you into selling one category, like awards. Or maybe they turn to you for drinkware, but they've got some other partner for apparel. This happened to us a lot with fulfillment, company stores, and program business. The distributorship that I ran, we focused on e-commerce and fulfillment and company stores. Well, what would happen is we would often get the most complicated, difficult projects, and all that sweet drop ship and rogue spending would go to someone else. So we made it a focus of ours, again, back to that word focus, to go after that spend, to convince our top 10 clients that we could be trusted with that work too. And that was there's like an area or a gap in our potential that we could spot. But this happens to you all the time. Like I said, clients pigeonhole you, they categorize you, whether you like it or not, as this person is creative or this person isn't creative, or this is the person we use for apparel, this is the person we use for awards. And when Brett comes on, we're going to talk a little bit about this in terms of PPE sales and how they're turning to some of those clients to sell promo and expand the category. But take that top 10 list and see if you can determine where this client has you pigeonholed, where they have you categorized. And I'll caution you too, that one of the things that you want to do is I think what happens in our business often is we have a client who turns to us all the time because we're their heroes. We constantly pull them out of jams. We're constantly finding solutions for them. And that buyer relies on us. We rely on that buyer. The average tenure in a marketing role is less than 2 years. And so what happens is that often when if you don't have anything beyond your relationship with the buyer, you lose the buyer, you lose the client. What happens when you get into broadening your categories or purposes or some of these other things is you begin to build intractable ways into the client that are beyond just the relationship or an additive to the relationship. So that's why we also want to explore product category. You might be thinking, my clients love me, they're going to buy everything from me. And I've heard that many times, and I've heard that many times walking by cases and cases of product that clients that loved me sold, bought from somebody else. So be careful with that. But we'll get off of this, but product category is a wonderful way to look at it. So far, here's what we've talked about to set epic sales goals. Number 1 is to list your core, your top 10 clients. Number 2 is to calculate your profitability. Number 3 is to set a baseline of annual sales to compare against. Number 4 is to compare or look at industry potential, what industry they're in. And number 5 is to look at category potential, where we can grow with those particular clients in those particular categories. Okay. Number 6, buyer potential. This is another report put out by PPAI, but the question we should be asking is who else buys? This is a report that shows that 80% of brands report additional departments outside of marketing that included promotional products within their company initiatives. So are you selling to the C-suite? Are you selling to HR? Are you selling to procurement? Growing widely is one of the fastest ways to grow with a customer. I'll show you in a minute the best way to grow. But we used to sell to the oil and gas industry, and this was an eye opener. One time we were targeting the marketing department, the marketing departments, and marketing departments in the energy sector do a different thing than marketing departments in B2B service companies. They're a completely different model. What I didn't know is we had an energy company that was in the office services department. And I thought, there's no way. This is like procurement. They're buying coffee and they're buying promo. There's no way the other oil and gas companies are wired like this. This is a strange animal. Come to find out, because most corporations tend to mimic each other and grow as they grow and change and buy each other. They look similarly, their infrastructure on the inside. Come to find out, everybody had an office services department, and that's where most of their promotional spend was. So a couple of lessons we learned is to not simplify the title game down to just marketing and procurement, to understand that there's a host of buying going on in other departments as well. The way we grow the most with B2B sales, no matter what sale it is in terms of B2B, this is from Heinz Marketing, 84% of B2B decision makers start the buying process with a referral. They start the buying process with a referral. So the lion's share of your business is likely grown by referral. The problem for us in our business is, how do we get those referrals? Often we used to do things like referral campaigns, or we do special kits and campaigns we'd mail out around the holidays, like Valentine's. I remember we did a campaign called the Red Hot Referral Program, where we were reaching out to customers trying to find other buyers within their company. Because not only do you have different titles, but you could have different divisions. You could have different, just the opportunity is endless with the larger the company is in terms of buyers. The problem is, every time we went to a buyer and said, can we speak to another, who would you recommend that we can talk to in your company? They would just sort of look at your glass ad. They're not really sure. They know what they do, but they're not quite sure what every other department's doing. So we figured out there was a secret to this. The secret to really getting a good referral is to ask at the heroic moment. You're delivering clients with projects all the time. And the time for you to ask for a referral is when you are their hero. That moment when they say, I can't believe you turned that around for us. I can't believe you got that for us in time, even though there was no inventory anywhere. I can't believe you did this, you did that. That's the time to say, Joan, Sue, is there anyone else we can talk to with your company? Who else can we talk to? Because they feel compelled to do something for you at that point. Whereas if you ask them 6 months later and there's nothing happening that gives them sort of an impetus or leverage, then they're not really going to come to the table with a lot of solid answers. So I always encourage folks to ask at the heroic moment when you deliver on those amazing, amazing projects. All right, number 7, back to potential. I just couldn't help share that tip because I think it's so vital as we grow and look at our sales planning for next year and our just pure sales. Back to discovering potential with your clients so that you can set accurate sales goals is to set purpose potential. This is another report by PPAI. They put out the 2019 sales by program category. I didn't necessarily like the wording on that because of the word program is a little confusing. What I like to call is this is the 2019 chart by sales purpose. So you might be selling a client gifts. You might be selling your customer client gifts. They turn to you for employee apparel, but they might not be turning to you for customer acquisition, a campaign for customer acquisition, or a campaign for workplace wellness, or a campaign for employee incentives. You might be, again, categorized or pigeonholed into a certain area. And so one of the ways that you can do this is to look at a chart like this and say, okay, what other business purposes can I sell to this client? And these are the kinds of things I'll show you at the end, how these can come up naturally throughout the year with your client. You can also create this on a quarterly or a monthly basis. But number 8 ties to number 7 as well, and that's setting proactive selling potential. In all my years working with clients, when I would do an exit interview with the customer and I would ask, what was it that we didn't provide, didn't do for you, the number one reason that they would share with me in one form or another was always the same answer. The answer was, you didn't provide enough new ideas to me. What they meant by that was that you weren't thinking proactively for the customer. You weren't thinking of ways that you can help them, that you were just an order taker, not really an order maker in that sense. That's the number one reason. So number 7 and 8 have to do with purpose-driven selling. How to work with the client in a very strategic way. Many of you were invited to the table in a strategic way when it came to kits over the past year or so. When you were doing kits, that wasn't just a kitting project, that was an employee engagement project. And that is what I mean by sort of discovering those purpose-driven selling opportunities that exist out there. Okay, number 9, we're almost done. Discovering trend potential. Now, trend potential is another thing that's usually happening in culture at the moment. Right now, you're seeing this all in the headlines about the big quit, the great resignation, and what's happening in terms of jobs, that there was more turnover in August for jobs than there was at any other time in the market. So you know that most of your customers are dealing with challenges like this in their business. So if you're not selling employee retention or employee engagement projects, that's time to sit down with those HR departments or with your buyer and say, proactively, how can we come and put together a strategic plan for you for 2022? Again, we're looking for those strategic opportunities to sell. And these kinds of headlines exist everywhere. These are some of my favorite headlines because this has to do with what's going on in the cultural zeitgeist in terms of branded merchandise. We've never seen the branded merchandise game elevated like we have with streetwear and fashion and the things that are happening in culture. This is another sort of talking point with some of your customers, is creating some really cool engagement apparel pieces or apparel lines, or creating a shop for your customer that helps celebrate this moment and helps engage them in their brand in ways just like this. Shops are not simply to have an easy way to get apparel to employees, although it is that. It's about cultivating brand champions, and that's what this is all about. Okay, a few final notes that didn't fit anywhere else, and then we're bringing on the real hero here, which is Brett. Sales by industry category. This is, if you're new to the business, this is something that PPAI also puts out, which is a report by industry category that shows you where most of the spend in promotional product selling, buying is done. And this is just an interesting chart to compare to. I just wanted you to know it exists and that you should be looking at this chart and looking at your client list to map toward that. The other thing I encourage you to do is look for gaps in spending. The business, as we know, can drive you absolutely crazy. And you see those peaks and valleys. No matter whether you're $1 million salesperson or 100,000, you have peaks and valleys in your sales world. And this is kind of interesting to look at because what it could do for you is that if you could find gaps in spending and find strategic ways to sell in those moments, you're also going to mitigate stress and the pain that goes on and try and balance that out throughout the year. So it's an interesting, take your top 10 clients, look at the annual sales in terms of a chart like this, so you can spot the gaps in spending, or at least so you can know where those rhythms are at. In our business, it feels like we're busy all the time. Like it doesn't feel like there are valleys and that there are mountains, but there really are. There are peaks and valleys all the time. So look for gaps in spending. There's an article out there that I encourage you to check out too when you have time, because we wanted Brett's perspective. We also have Michael Wolliver that we've had on the program before talk about setting sales goals in uncertain times. It's a great article. It's out there on community.commonsku.com. We can also send it to you in a follow-up when we send you the materials from this presentation. But he talks about how their team uses Slack, how they inspire each other for sales and things like that as well. Okay, quick review. How do we set sales goals for next year? We're going to look at our current client growth opportunity. What is the potential for that book of business? We're going to see if you were doing 500,000, maybe your potential after you've done those exercises are 750,000. And then maybe your new business goal is 150,000. So that would be a total of 900,000 for your individual goal that you would roll up then into your team goals. This can work by business unit or individual sales goals altogether. The reason why setting sales goals is so important for next year and to do these exercises to find gaps in spending or gaps in buying is so that as you go about your incredibly busy workday, you have your Wi-Fi signal on. It's like you have your ears attuned to opportunity like you wouldn't have had before if you didn't go through this exercise. If you didn't realize that you weren't selling particular categories to customers, but you now do, this is a great time for you to, as you work with your client, bring up things very naturally. You can see growth categories, new potential buyers, referrals. You can sense opportunities in casual conversation with clients or changes in direction maybe the business is going. It's almost like going through all this exercise just turns your Wi-Fi signal on up really high so that you can spot these opportunities as you're working with them. Murakami, the writer, has sold millions of books and has really just revolutionized the world of fiction. And he is not only a writer, but he is a runner. And he has run many marathons, and he's a former small business owner. So he understands a lot of aspects of what we do. And someone asked him in an interview, what's the most important quality for success? And he said, that's easy. It's about focus. Without focus, you can't accomplish anything of value. If you can focus effectively, you'll be able to compensate for an erratic talent, which is what we have in our industry, is a lot of erratic talent, or even a shortage of talent. Is all about that focus. So that's the other reason why we really want to do sales goals for next year. So you'll know who you want to focus on so you can achieve the greatest return for your investment. I'll review these quick 10 real quick and invite Brett Boake on stage for us, but focus on your core, calculate your profitability, set a baseline, industry potential, category potential, buyer potential, purpose potential, proactive selling, trend potential, and reverse engineer those sales so that you can create your goals. Hi, Brett. Welcome.
Bobby, how are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great. So good to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm excited.
What's your what's your day and week like right now? Is fourth quarter hitting you guys pretty hard?
Fourth quarter is crazy. It's exciting. I never want to use the word busy because we're always busy doing something, but we are excited to see what's transpiring in the last couple months here. And we're pumped. We're pumped to see what the December 31st numbers are going to look like.
Yeah, that's exciting. So for folks that don't know Brett, Brett spoke at SKU Camp on our panel on sales and marketing. And Brett has moved into a role at Score Promotions where he is in a coaching role. Brett's background is he was a pro hockey player at one time. And so I think it's phenomenal parallel that you have with your sports career and what's going on now as a coach, because I think coach is the perfect metaphor for what we do in our business and working with sales teams. Is helping them achieve their greatest potential. You could argue, why does LeBron James need a coach? And it's just so they can help them spot that potential. So let's start with tactical first, and then we'll move to motivation. Brett, how do you guys at Score? You had phenomenal growth last year. It was insane growth. And how do you set targets and goals for reps? Like, is this done in tandem with reps? Can you kind of give us a glimpse of what that process is like?
Absolutely. So we have teams. We literally have 5 teams that's broken into an executive account manager that has account managers underneath them. We have individual sales reps that we have almost like the inside sales team. And so we call them teams. I'm a sports guy. So everything to me, it comes back to that team atmosphere. Every email I send out is started with, "Hey team, how are you team," etc. So what we do is I work with that team. And I start with the executive account manager of that particular team. And I send out something actually I'm doing in a week from now, and I call it focus, plan, strategize. So that's kind of the subject line. And then what I do is I give them 3 key points. So the 3 key points in that is the highlights of their last year. So I also give them their numbers. They can see, they can click in commonsku, and they can start seeing what they did in January, what they did in February, all the way down to December. The next thing is I give them key thoughts to think about. So what I'm asking them to really dive into. And then the third point is create that vision plan. So for me, it's a vision plan. What does 2022 look like for them? Where's the growth going to come from? So I give them all the components that they need to really be able to sit and digest what they did the last year, and then what they're going to start to accomplish for the next
year. You set those sales targets obviously in the platform. Not everybody that's listening to the webinar today is a customer, but for those that are, it's really easy to set those sales targets in the platform. What I love about that, it's in front of you. Whereas opposed to having a goal that you've set at the end of the year in December, and then you kind of forget about it as you go by and you're crazy. It's kind of always floating in front of you, which is one of the reasons I love that. How do you said by teams? So obviously these clients are broken up. Are they broken up by specialty? These teams are broken up by specialty, or just that particular book of business that they're
just that book of business, just that book of business. Now it just curates to. We have a team that focuses more on alcohol brands and that type of industry, beauty, law, financial. So just kind of naturally progress that way, their book of business, and that's how we focus.
Yeah. Okay. And you have in your infrastructure a particular, you actually have business development reps that are solely focused on biz dev, right?
We have the best in the business, Bobby. We have.
I figured you would.
And I spoke about this at SKU Camp. I mean, for us with our biz dev team that's growing, and we're really focusing on that division at SCORE in 2022. It's incredible because that department is, again, this team atmosphere that we've created at SCORE. You have that team, which is your account reps that really are the front face, and they're talking with the clients and they're driving the sales, giving the ideation. But that business development comes in and also helps. How are you getting in other departments? Here's how we strategize. Just here's who we're going to speak to. I've seen this on the news of your clients. So they empower and they really arm. The key is they arm that team to really go back to that client with that information and that next point for business.
Yeah. I'm sure that biz dev, one of the challenges in our business is that salespeople typically are so busy taking care of clients. It's 2 different roles, right? You've got, and it's almost like 2 different disciplines, 2 different characteristics, I would think, where you have, I don't necessarily like the old analogy of farmers and hunters. I think that's an archaic analogy. However, there are people in our business. What happens is you take care of a book of business. And if you're one of the lucky ones and you're busy all the time, you have very little bandwidth and focus for new biz dev. And is that why you broke that out?
It is. So if I rewind and I go back to my focus plan and strategy project that we give the team, part of that is who do you want to focus on? What new business? So when you showed that pyramid earlier, it's focusing on that new business. Now, when I was in sales, and that's when I was doing that day to day, that was a part of my focus. That's what I was good at. It was getting on the phone and talking and shaking hands and creating that dialogue and that relationship. That's what our business development does. So they focus on with the reps. Who do you want to go after? Who do you really want to focus in? Do you have a large client that has 5 or 6 departments that we haven't even touched, like you said earlier? So business development then takes that on and does a lot of that legwork, a lot of that calling and introing. Hey, you already work with us. We have a great team here. And so that group is still driving that book of business forward, while business development is starting to then bring other people to the table. It's incredible.
Yeah. I love that. I love it too, because often we think of biz dev as just new logos, but really them calling the same clients and trying to get that referral or expand that is a fantastic way to grow. And it gives them that focus. I'm assuming you don't have to answer this, but I'm assuming then the compensation structures are so that biz dev then will have a small percentage of that. So they keep moving on to the next client. And then, but the major lion's share of that revenue and profit and commission goes to that core team.
Correct.
What have you learned? Like Brett, you're unique in that you have this incredible sports background. You're kind of wired like a coach. What did you learn about setting goals in terms of your experience in sales as a salesperson? And how do you look at it differently now being a coach?
Well, going from the day-to-day sales into a coaching management role, and I hate using that word. I like the coaching and that leader role. I don't have to be that day-to-day hero for that client. So what I try to get the team is I try to arm them. I always try to give them people in different departments to really arm them. We've created new roles, and I think we'll get into that a little later, is what other pieces can we arm that salesperson with to really drive forward the sales. So when I look at their vision plan for next year and their targets, what they want to accomplish, is who do we need to put in place to really get them there? So they're not a lone soldier. If they're a team of 3, they're actually a team of 20, because we have so many people in different departments that are going to tackle that same project to get that close won.
That's a tremendous asset I think a coach brings. And I'm with you. I prefer the term coach simply because the coach can stand back and sees the whole game. Even if you're the greatest basketball player in the world, you're seeing your lane, your zone, your area. That's all you can see. In this business, exactly the same way. How do you monitor and measure goals and progress as you go? Is this getting just really tactical for a minute and almost pedantic? Like, what is that weekly or monthly? Is it meetings? How are you guys doing check-ins in terms of where we're at and how progress is happening?
Well, we're in a funny world now where we're doing Zoom instead of face-to-face. So current state at SCORE, we have people in and out. So we have some of the sales teams in, some of the sales teams at home. So every week it's set in their calendar, a one-on-one meeting, and we go over. And of course, with commonsku, I can share my screen if we're doing virtual, and I can look at each project and where it's at, how it's progressing, what the wins were, but more importantly, what the losses were. So if you take it back to that team atmosphere in those games, it's the losses where we really can take a look at and see what happened, where do we need to pivot, what do we need to change to create that win. So every week I'm working with each team and seeing what their rewards, what they won and what they lost, and then we compare and we said, okay, how can we turn that loss? Is it really a loss? Can we go that one more and get that into an actual sale? And it's weekly, so we look at their numbers. And the one thing we of course came to commonsku April 1st of this year, and so I had some teams go on that goal. So we put that goal setting into the system so they could see it. They could see their goal, what they wanted, that target each month for that client and for their book of business. So we're able to measure that weekly and see the outcome every month.
Okay. I love that. I love that weekly and monthly view. And the cool thing too is looking at those losses, just like again a coach would look at a post game video, right, or a post game recording. They would see those losses. That's something we don't do enough. Is that I don't think we look at those projects they kind of disappear in a black hole. We see our progress, but we don't go, okay, why did we not get that project? That was a $10,000 project. That was a $20,000 project. Why did that fall through? It's really important. So how else do you mentioned things like a vision board, you do Q4 contests. Can you sort of give an idea or a glimpse into some of the things that you and your team do on a quarterly basis to inspire each other toward growth?
Okay, so current state, we're in Q4, obviously, and we have what we call a Q4 contest. And it's something when I came to SCORE that the ownership had already instilled and started to do year after year. And you could see the energy. So the first year I came in, I'm like, what's stirring? What are people talking about? When we came into that September, October world. And what we do now, what I've done the last couple of years is I divided the whole company into 4 teams. This was a year ago. And right from the guy that's packing the boxes, which are the incredible part of the team, to the accounting people, to the CSR team, graphics, etc. And we put targets on that team. So it was actual sales figure targets. This year, we're coming out of the pandemic, we've done something a little differently. Again, going back to that team camaraderie, it's all or nothing. So we put a sales target on where we wanted to finish off the year and what we needed to get there. And we gave them a goal. What's our goal? What do we get if as a team, how are we going to celebrate this incredible win? And I'm excited to say we're on pace to actually exceed that target. And then the other thing, what we do is, how do we reward people? How do we recognize people that, as you know, Bobby, that the salespeople are always, oh, there's a sales contest for the salespeople. Must be nice, right? I'm the one making I'm the one making that fulfillment look beautiful. I'm the one making sure that we're not on hold with the vendor. We're doing the one more factor, and the one more factor is every 2 weeks we get together virtually right now as a team, as a overall company, everyone on the call, and people can nominate. So very discreetly, I had one come in just before I jumped on here of what person in the company did that one more, because the salesperson can go out and get the sales, the business development can go out and bring in a new client. But really, we all know that it's the person that's making sure that shipment gets there on time, is making sure that the vendor is working with you. It's a team goal in the end. So what we've done is we want to reward people for that, and people get fired up, and you can see the whole company come like this. And it's something we do, and it's something that we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, this is so vital too, because Forrester Research, it's not just our industry, but what's happening in our industry compared to what's going on in B2B in general is fascinating. In B2B in general, there's what's happening is the democratization of the sales force, meaning all of the power, the activity, and concentration doesn't exist anymore in one lone person. It's because teams have gone more complex. B2B buyers, the buyers themselves have increased. The number of approvals that are inside your larger corporations has increased. And so it's required a team effort. And we know in our industry, kitting, fulfillment, program business, all of that, the complexity of our business has almost made the team model far more common than it is the sort of the old traditional salesperson as the solo hero model. So team selling has become vitally important. So it's interesting that you guys have done that. You also, I love how your contest rewards and recognizes folks on the team, no matter whether they're packing a box or whether they just sold that $10,000 order.
Correct.
You moved from being a player to being a player coach. What through this transition, what was the hardest thing that you thought going into it? Like, okay, I'm now going to go into this coaching role, and I want to encourage all the entrepreneurs and owners that are on the call with their teams. What did you think it was going to be like versus the reality, and what's the most important lesson you've learned?
The largest, I would say that for me, it's not being the hero to the client every day and empowering everyone. So we have so many departments at SCORE, and it's empowering those people in those departments that were given that job for a reason, because they're superstars, and we have to empower them. I'm here to always back them up, and I have ownership that will always back me up with a blink of an eye. But I want to empower them. I want to help teach them, and I want to lead them to making those decisions and making them feel comfortable in making those decisions, and arming them with the right tools to make those decisions. Yeah. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me.
Okay. You have also been really passionate about this, and that's playing to people's strengths. So no doubt another influence from your hockey days. What does that look like practically for you and your team? Can you giving us an example of how you have helped maybe shift players around in different roles, or how you've changed your infrastructure so that you can play toward your entire team's strength?
Sure. We have an incredible young lady that has been with us for quite a while, and she's been a huge impact on one of our team's book of business for the last several years. And we could just see that she was getting stale, because she is an incredible product guru. She knows product, she knows what's trending, she knows where to get it in a blink of an eye. We have a very open concept, amazing office space, and people would yell out, "I need this," and she'd be the first one as she's typing away, and she would call so-and-so, get it.
Right.
Just incredible. But she was starting to get stagnant. And we could see that growth was just not there. And we knew we want this person a part of our team. She's part of our SCORE family. So we created a new role for her. We said, where are we going to put her? Are we just going to put her with another team? Are we just going to do that lateral shift to the next line, if you want to call it in the hockey world?
Right.
No, we created a new position for her. And she now dives into all our team's book of businesses. And she is just, you can see the energy level back up. You can see how the teams all around have really invited her in and her knowledge to help them. And then she's a part of our business development. So she's bringing in new business as well. So that's just one example of how we really look at the strengths and really key in on that with our team.
That's really cool. We've got just two more questions, but I want to encourage everyone, if you've got a question you have for Brett, please throw it in the chat and I can mention that to Brett while we wrap up here. I know the sales game has changed a lot through the years. What do you think constitutes the traits and skill of a great salesperson now?
For us at SCORE, it's out of the box thinking. You have to be able to think quickly and out of the box. It's you have to show, and you have to have integrity as well. For us, it's that competitive drive, that competitive spirit. Do I want the book smarts? We don't need the book smarts. I think if you have certain traits that I just said, I think everything can fall into play, and we can coach, we can learn from them, they can learn from us, they can learn from the great people around us. So we're looking for someone that's really fits our culture and in our style, the way we think. I think that's really what a salesperson is now. That old shirt and tie or business slacks or dresses, I think is out the door. And I think it's just who wants to go out there and who's hungry, who wants to just learn, absorb as a sponge continuously, because our business, as you know, I've been 19 years and it's changing continuously. And we're always learning a new thing every day. And that's what you just have to want that learning process to continue in your professional life.
I think that's significant. Curiosity, I think, has kept more people in this business because it's definitely one of those industries. When I would have a new person come in the business, I would say to them, you're going to learn something this week that I don't know anything about. And I've been doing this business for 20 plus years, right? Because there's so much change happening all around us and the variables are so intense. Last question then. What do you think and by the way, Robert asked, will you send us the PowerPoint deck? Yes, we will send you the deck and we will be posting this recording as well. But the last question for you, Brett, what do you think is required of a coach today? Maybe perhaps different than the past, but what do you think is required for us as we're going to coach our teams moving into 2022?
Must be able to inspire. You have to be able to inspire your team and the people around you. Number one, in this new era, this new world, empathy. You have to have empathy with the people around you as well. You have to be able to resolve the concerns of people, whether it's their personal life when they bring it to the office, and then obviously their professional life as well. So for me, I think being a leader right now is staying true to the values of yourself and your company, and never veering off that path, and being a strong, that will just put you into that driver's seat as a leader, and people will then get on the bus and they'll be with you. Yeah,
I love it. Brett, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate the generosity. Thank you for you and the principals at SCORE and folks that are willing to share your team's ideas and ingenuity and talent. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today, and always enjoy having you on, my friend. And I hope that everyone tuning in, I hope it was helpful to you. We'll be sending out the recording. We'll send the presentation, but I wish you well, and we hope you guys have an amazing year.
Thanks, Bobby. Can't wait to see you in 2 months.
That's right. See you at SKUCon, January 9th. All right. Thanks, Brett.
Okay, Bobby.
Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.